Well, joining me now to get us some reaction is Professor Thomas Mandrup, who's Extraordinary Associate Professor at Stellenbosch University. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Your reaction, did the SADC leaders make the right call here?
Thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon to the viewers. Yeah, I think there was no really other credible solution than to withdraw the force. Basically, you can argue that you got nearly 2,000 South African and SADC troops caught in two camps up there. They're not prisoners of war officially, but they are caught in the camps and they can't get in and out, and they are on the mercy of the rebels and the Rwandan army. So there was no other options than to find a way to withdraw and terminate the mission.
Yeah, and then of course there's the issue around, obviously then we need to reflect on the mission's time in the DRC and talk about the impact that it has had. I mean, would you say that there's been a dent in the peacekeeping mission in the Eastern DRC?
I think we need to split the two. The previous speaker, Windgreen, he mentioned it quite rightly that South Africa is part of the peacekeeping mission, which is MONUSCO, which is the UN peacekeeping mission. Some DRC is not a peacekeeping mission. It's an offensive mission with a mandate to neutralize the negative forces, starting with the M23. So that's one thing. So there's two different missions, two different mandates. UN was supposed to give some kind of logistical support to some DRC since the fall of Goma and all that. That has been extremely difficult, if not impossible. Yes, there is a dent. This is from the day one. This has been a badly executed and badly planned mission. We just have to remember that basically when the South African and some DRC forces landed in Goma in December 2023, nothing was prepared for them. They had to go to town to buy food. The camp that was established, that took over a UN camp on the bottom of a valley, where the rebels could sit on the top of the hills and use mortars directly into the camp because you didn't have resources to build a proper strategic located camp. And that is in a mission that is an offensive mission with an offensive mandate to support, and with a mandate to support the Congolese army to disarm and neutralize the rebel forces which we knew was supported by Rwanda. So it's a very much a dent in South Africa's the SADC's ability to actually undertake this kind of mission, which is quite sad. And I'm really feeling sad for the soldiers being given an impossible task by the political level and the military leaders.
Yeah, but then there's the question of what is left behind. You know, what the SADC mission being withdrawn means for civilians in the Eastern DRC. I mean, what comes top of mind for you?
Basically, you can argue that because some DRC has not managed to fulfill this mandate. It started out trying to do offensive operations, was not very successful. You started by losing 7-8 soldiers in the first part of 24 of that mission after deploying. Then you became more restrictive in the way you operated, and then of course we had the big push here from December, to 2003. 2024. So basically, you can argue that for a long time, the South DRC has not been able to fulfill that mandate of protection of civilians. So the next problem, of course, being that the UN mission with the new mandate that came in December 2024. And it was emphasized that the mission's main purpose was to do protection of civilians. Basically, the mission right now is that you've deployed a UN mission, MONUSCO, with a mandate to protection of civilians, which do not have the capabilities and capacity to do so in an efficient way. So basically, the civilian population are on the mercy of Rwanda and M23 and other rebel groups in that area at the moment, which of course is quite sad. And we have to wait and see how that's going to materialize and how the UN Security Council is going to react to this.
Let's talk about the how now this withdrawal process that's about to unfold is going to look. Of course, what we're hearing is that the withdrawal of the SADC mission's troops will be over a phased period. What would that need to look like?
Yeah, as I think Dean Windgren said it quite well.
Yeah.
There's it needs to be by airlift, and South Africa has previously had some illusions. The least that can actually carry this kind of equipment and get things in and out of that they can do that again. The problem is, of course, what kind of airport can they use? Can they use Goma? It's quite easy to reopen of Goma Airport, but then you need to negotiate that kind of access and the reopening of the Goma airport. So that is what's going on at the moment. The big issue for the South African Defence Force, of course, is that we have a lot of equipment stock in these camps. G5 artillery systems, got intelligence equipment. You've got other kind of very expensive equipment on the ground, which you would very much like to get out. Without leaving it to the rebels, or if you have to leave it, then maybe you will have to destroy it. And how can you do that if you have run out of ammunition and not being able to do that up there and all that? So it's billions worth of equipment in those camps. So it's very important that you negotiate that kind of agreement. So that will be the first thing, is that you need to start a process with Rwanda and M23 on how to be allowed to leave in a decent way, whether that be via Rwanda or via Goma, it would be ideal. Of course, there's a lot of things. You need to swallow your pride, because this is a military disaster for South Africa. It's again, after you have the disaster back in Bangui in 2013 in Central African Republic, where you also had to withdraw, and you were left by politicians, left in an impossible situation, the defense force at that time. This time around, you're again in a similar situation where you have to leave an area where you have been basically not defeated, but you have not managed to fulfill your mandate, and you are in a very, very precarious situation up there. And you have to swallow your pride, and then you need to go back and rethink what is the role of the South African Defence Force? How is that you want to use the Defence Force for the future? And that kind of redesign needs to start, and it should have started 10 years ago.
Yeah, let's sit with that a little bit, though, Prof, because I mean, what you're talking about is you talk about needing to swallow our pride, and there's of course the question around the importance of perceptions of South Africa's army on the continent. Just talk to me about how important that is, and you talk about swallowing our pride. Is that saying that it's not looking very good at the moment?
Yeah, but it's not been a secret. You can just go to the defense budget from last year, and you can ask the question. In that, the defense minister acknowledged that the defense force is in a very terrible state, and a lot of equipment are not operational, and all these kind of things. All the facts are there, and they've acknowledged that. And again, on paper, in statistics, South Africa is supposed to have the third strongest army in Africa, which of course is bollocks, because it might be that you have 37 C-130 transport aircraft, but if you only got one that is operational. The same goes with the Rooivalk attack helicopters. So if you got 14, or how many you got, if you only got one or two that's operational, that doesn't cut it. So you have a problem here where you have a defense force that is underfunded. It's been underfunded for years now. The defense chiefs, others have, and analysts has been calling and they're arguing this for a long time. The political level has known that, and they again with the new budget proposal, in actual terms, it means that you actually get less money, purchasing power for next year's budget. If you follow what the finance minister suggested yesterday, because of inflation rates and all that. So basically, you're not using enough, and then you have on top of that you are putting additional tasks on the defense force. So the defense force is taking over police tasks. So those anti-Sama operations, the protection of strategic nodal points, power plants, all that. The border protection, where you have many thousand troops being deployed at all times, all year, which are actually police tasks, are being used. The defense force are being used for these kind of things, and so you need to solve these kind of things. And then, of course, domestically and internally in the defense force, you have a defense force which is there's personnel problems here, which basically means that you have a defense force which is not, where a lot of staff is not operational because they cannot live up to the physical standards of being deployed, which means that the pool of people you can actually deploy to missions are less than the numbers you have. And also you have a very, very top-heavy defense force where you have too many generals. and too few actually soldiers on the ground. So your tools-to-tail ratio needs to be adjusted, and that has been pointed out on several occasions, again and again and again. But that again, it needs to come from the political level. So there's an equipment issue. You're using too much money on personnel. You're using between 65 and 70% of your budget on personnel. The international best practice standard is around 40%. So there's a structural issue here. And before you solve these kind of things, you cannot have an effective force deploying to peace missions on the continent.
So, Prof, before I let you go, and I need to squeeze one last one in here. I mean, you mentioned Treasury's allocation yesterday and 5 billion rand from the finance minister for these troops. And I mean, essentially is the question, is it too little, too late? But this is the closing question. What is it that South Africa then does moving forward? We can see the withdrawal of troops with the SADC mission, but is there a role that we really can still play to contribute to that regional stability in the DRC?
Yeah, and the thing is, of course, and that's, I understand the ANC position on this. South Africa cannot, sit by being a regional great power, not doing nothing. But the problem is, of course, that you have left your defense force overburdened by domestic tasks because of the internal crime problems and other issues you have in all that. And you have you're underfinanced for years now, your defense force, and you're not implemented the needed reform to have a smaller, effective, efficient, well-functioning defense force, professional defense force, and you need to do that. And I think the problem is, I remember a few years back, the former chief of defense, he said, I'm not going to be the chief of defense. They're going to let people go or fire people even in the defense force. And that. And you had Permsec Gomet is saying that defense force plays an important role as an employer, as an employment institution for the defense force. And again, that can be a policy, but then don't talk about having a professional defense force being able to go out and do offensive operations and kind of doing a difference in Africa if you're not willing to giving it the tools needed. And I think that's back to the political level. They need to take the difficult choices and make the difficult choices and take these discussions up front and start this kind of reform. And you need to get put in pressure on the chiefs and all that in the defense force that they need to actually reform.
Yeah. Prof, we really do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking to us this afternoon. Professor Thomas Mandrup there, who is an associate professor with Stellenbosch University.